This episode is brought to you by Starbucks.
That is fire.
Whoa, that's good.
This might be the drink of the summer.
Okay, I like this one too. I'm rocking with it. Okay.
Try it for yourself. Starbucks Refreshers Concentrates are coming home. Find them in the coffee aisle and make it yours.
Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 238 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Mark, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, wearing all my Sixers gear just in case on the 10% chance LeBron signs today. But I don't think that's going to happen. So instead, let's make people on the internet mad about quarterback rankings.
Yeah, it's truly the best show of the year. Where we talk about quarterbacks and everybody gets upset. Eagles fans will be upset. Every fan will be upset. If you want to make people upset in the offseason, you just release some quarterback rankings. And so that's what we're going to do today. We are going to rank the starting quarterback for every team in the NFL. And a little bit of stipulations on how we're doing this. So we are looking at this on a 1-year timeline. And so we are not really factoring in age. It doesn't matter that Matthew Stafford's like 57 years old. We're not factoring in youth. It doesn't matter that, Drake May is 22 years old. We're looking at, if I had a team this season, this is the order in which I would want these quarterbacks on my football team. And so we're trying to look at talent, set aside age. However, we are factoring in a little bit of health into this situation. So, you have Mahomes coming off of a late season injury. You've got Joe Burrow's just continual battles with health. And so we're factoring in injury concerns a little bit. We are not factoring in the age. Is that kind of how you did this, Mark? Am I explaining this correctly?
Yeah, well, I think age is like somewhat of a factor in terms of this year, but like a lot of it is based on what they've done and a little kind of like what we expect them to be this year, I would say. But like, I think it's always going to be nebulous in how we break this down and how we exactly do the criteria. I think I think we mostly agree there. Like, we'll get to a guy at near the top that I think there's somewhat of a factor of age, I think, is in the conversation, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into this then. And I think in the past we've gone 30, we haven't usually done 32 because there's been rookies. There's no rookie projected starters because the Raiders are stupid and plan to start Kirk Cousins this year. So should we go ahead and start at 32 and work our way up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, spoiler alert. We both have Deshaun Watson, number 32. He's a terrible quarterback. He's a terrible human being. I got nothing else to say there. Mark, anything you want to say before we keep this rolling?
It is an absolute... I remember, I think it was midway through last year, we started getting the reports where it's like, the Browns, you would start to hear Deshaun Watson expected to be the starter next year. Or Stefanski expects Deshaun Watson to be the starter next year, or whatever it was. And I kept being like, there's just no way that they would put up with this after all of these years with this short of a time left on the contract. Like, there's no way they wouldn't get out of this at this point. And I thought last year they kind of got away with him almost being away from the team, because of that injury. I thought that was kind of the easy break where it's like, all right, this was a disaster. We sacrificed all of our morals to bring you in, and you were horrible. And now you're extremely hurt. And then you just turn around and he's the starter this year. Like, it's unfathomable to me. As unfathomable as it was in October last year, whenever we started hearing about it. I think we even mentioned it on the pod, and I was like, there's no way that's true. He's not going to be the starter, and here we are. And he's probably going to be the starter. And if it was Shedeur, I think Shedeur is probably also 32 on my... Yeah, Shedeur is 32 on my list, probably, if we put this together and consider what Shedeur showed us last year. But yeah, it's just, at least if you're starting Shedeur, you're not, starting an actual monster on the field. And whatever. We talked enough about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Just a bad organization. I would play without a quarterback before I would start Deshaun Watson in 2026. But hey, at least the Browns drafted 2 quarterbacks and 3 running backs in last year's draft. So let's keep it rolling. Mark, who do you have at 31?
31. This was tough. I would say 26 through 31 is pretty tough for me. Maybe more like 28 or 29 through 31. But 31, I'm going to say Jacoby Brissett. I feel like there's weirdly a lot of like media people out there who are like, oh, Jacoby Brissett, better than people think. And like, I know Greg Rosenthal famously, I think it was after Baker's first Bucs year. I think he, in his top 100 free agents that he does every year, which I actually think is the best free agent list that anybody does. Generally, I think Rosenthal does a good job with that. And he also is willing to throw some hot takes out there, which I appreciate. But one of those hot takes, one of those years was Jacoby Brissett over Baker. And then the next year was Baker's best year of his career, and Brissett has not really done anything since. I feel like there was Brissett put up some stats last year. They went 1-11 in his games, and I don't know if there were a lot of close losses in there. Like, they were uncompetitive for a lot of those games. I think a lot of those stats were just throwing from deep behind.
Yeah, he's also at 31 for me. Just not a guy that you want to be a starting quarterback for you. And it's a really bad situation. You know, you could certainly do worse, see Deshaun Watson. Jacoby Brissett's a guy that you want as your backup to come in for a few weeks, not a guy that you're going to enter the season with a starter. So let's keep rolling. I don't want to spend too...
Real quick, I think I've said this on this pod, or maybe when we were talking about the Cardinals. Just start Carson Beck. You drafted him on day 2. He's like 30 years old. Like, he's not like 21. Like, if you're going to draft a quarterback who's been in college for 6 years, I think he's like 24, by the way. But if you're going to draft a quarterback who's been in college for 5 or 6 years in the second or third round, the plan should be to play him in year 1, especially when you have no other quarterback on the roster at all.
Yeah, Carson Beck will turn 25 during the season.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I like Carson Beck or that I think he'll be good at all. I think he'll probably be bad. But what's the point in trotting out Jacoby Brissett? And then I'm sure they're going to bench Brissett for Gardner Minshew at some point. And it's like, what's the point if you're the Cardinals of playing Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew? Throw out the kid you drafted, even if I think he stinks.
Yeah. Well, speaking of guys that should just get started, let's go to Las Vegas because Kirk Cousins is their starting quarterback. I have him at number 30. You have him at number 28. Same thing. Like, you took Fernando Mendoza number 1 overall. Kirk Cousins got benched for Michael Penix Jr., who's now probably benched for Tua, who was benched for musical chairs of benching quarterbacks. Like, we don't need to see Kirk Cousins play for 4 weeks. We know he's bad. Just play Fernando Mendoza. So I've got Cousins at 30. You've got him at 28.
Yeah, again, a lot of this back end you could really, really argue in a circle about. I think Cousins stinks. I think he's washed. I think he has no motion, no ability to move in the pocket post Achilles at all. He was better last year at the end of the year than he was the year before. When he really was immobile. But yeah, I went with Cousins over a young guy who it might be unfair to rank as low as I did. And I also went with Cousins over another similarly flawed, I guess, veteran at this point who is basically replacing him.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to it. He is... Oh, no. You've got a number 30 first. I'm going to do my 29, and then we'll get your 30.
Yeah,
so
that's fine.
My number 29 is Tua. This is one of those that we both have him in the same spot, which I always think is funny in like the teens and 20s. Near the top, we're always going to have certain guys in the same spot. Maybe. Near the bottom, we're always going to have the same guys. But I always think it's funny when, like, in the 20s, we just randomly have guys in the same spot. And that's Tua here at 29. If it was Michael Penix Jr., it doesn't really change the equation for me. Falcons are in a bad quarterback position because they made bad moves at the quarterback position. Paying Kirk Cousins big money when they shouldn't have, drafting Michael Penix Jr. when they shouldn't have. It's just kind of been a disaster for Atlanta in the draft as well. So that is Tua at number 29. Any thoughts you want to throw out there on Tua?
Funny enough, I think Tua is actually a good bit better than Michael Penix, and I think they should start Tua over Penix. At least he has shown at some point that he could fit in a system that worked around him. But funny enough, I would actually have Penix in the same spot on my list. So for what it's worth, the Falcons starter would be 29 no matter what.
Yeah. All right. Well, who do you have at number 30?
Number 30, I have Cam Ward, and I know that that's not fair. He was terrible last year, but I said before the year, the situation was so bad that I didn't even think it was fair to criticize him. But then I watched it, and it's hard not to criticize. So I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite for what I said before last season. And maybe he could make me look really dumb because you have Brian Daboll now. You added Carnell Tate. You added Wan'Dale Robinson. They added, I think they added an O-lineman. I think they signed an O-lineman. But you have a little bit better of an infrastructure around you. Calling plays, players, personnel-wise. So I think he'll probably be better this year. I just thought as of right now, Kirk showed me a little bit more at the end of last year. Tua has a little bit more recent success. Obviously, Ward doesn't have any NFL success, but I do get ranking him higher just based on the upside and not wanting to punish him from last year. So was a really hard one to rank. We for Inside Baseball, for what it's worth, behind the scenes, Shane and I last year didn't rank the year 2 guys. This year, Shane initially was not going to rank Ward and Dart on this list, and I, for some reason, was like, let's just do all 32 because it's like, at least because we didn't have any other rookie starters. It felt right to have all 32 teams on the list to me. But I do understand the argument of not ranking Ward or Dart because it might not be fair to yet.
Yeah, I famously do not like ranking second-year players on this list. Mark made me do it, so if you're a Titans fan that is upset I have Ward at 26, it's Mark's fault. I don't want to put the verdict out on a guy who's only played 1 year in such a bad situation.
Wait.
Mark
Did
made me
you say
do
if
it.
you're a Titans fan who's upset, you have him at 26?
Yeah.
If you're a Titans fan, you can't be upset he's at 26. I'm sorry. You can't be. You show me something.
Mark, this is how it works. There's Browns fans that are upset that Deshaun Watson's at 32.
Cardinals fans. Jacoby Brissett's 29, not 31.
So, yeah, I want to see Ward for another year. I want to see him in year 2. I want to see every player in year 2 before I make any sort of referendum. Fair. And obviously, these lists, I'm very open to dramatically changing my list year to year based on stuff too. So I'm not the guy that's going to be like, well, man, Cam Ward led the Titans to a 12-win season this year and was awesome, but I had him at 26 last year, so I can only move him to 22. Like, I'll move guys more than that. But anyways, let's keep rolling. Our next guy is the same. I've got him at 28. You have him at number 27. It's Geno Smith. Geno Smith. I was kind of a Geno Smith truther for a few years, and last year I stopped being a Geno Smith truther. Geno Smith made me look really stupid last offseason, and Sam Darnold, when we were both kind of critical of the Seahawks for letting Geno out of the building to go trade for Darnold. We thought the Raiders could be interesting with Geno and with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers, and Geno was just a disaster last year. So he returns to the Jets where he started his career, and the Jets, man, I mean, it's not like they had a lot of good options at quarterback, but I have some concerns about this one.
Yeah, this is a hard one to rank. He was so terrible last season that it's hard to defend it or ignore it in any way, but we are only 1 year removed from 2024 in Seattle, where he won 10 games, 70% completion percentage, 4,320 yards. He did throw 15 picks, actually. I didn't remember that he threw that many picks that year. But still, other than that, really good year, and they won 10 games, and they were probably, obviously they leveled up when they got rid of Geno. They won the Super Bowl. But I do think he deserves some credit for at least being able to be on a good team 2 years ago. More so than a Kirk or a Tua. So that was what that came down to for me.
For what it's worth, last year we had Geno ranked 15th and 16th on our lists. So we talked earlier about big movements over the year, and maybe it won't be justified. Maybe he'll move back.
One of my worst takes of all time on this show, of all time. And I think Shane, I don't know if he fully co-signed it, but I think he pretty much agreed. My take was that Seattle was going to be a good 10 or 11 win team last year, that we felt like, man, if they would have just kept Geno, they could have been like a 12-win team and competed. And instead, Sam Darnold goes and wins the Super Bowl, the exact opposite of what I said. So one of my worst takes of all time on this show.
Yeah, I have no recollection of that. Let's move on. Yeah, I thought, we both kind of thought that was crazy, and we turned out to be very wrong.
Very wrong.
So let's keep rolling here. At number 27, I have Daniel Jones. You have him up at number 23. There's been a lot of revisionist history, I think, with Daniel Jones, with people like, he was an MVP candidate through the first month of the season, and it's like, I mean, was he really? I mean, can anybody really be an MVP candidate through 4 weeks of a season? He certainly started the year well last year. I have a lot of doubts it was ever going to last to that degree. You can only get away with that gimmicky of an offense for so long, I feel like, in the modern NFL before teams start to clamp that down. And then you layer on top of it the injury, a pretty devastating injury that he's going to be trying to come off of. So I have him a lower than you do. I just don't think you want Daniel Jones to be your quarterback in 2026. If you could promise me his athleticism is still there after the injury, I would probably have him a little higher, because I don't think he's just terrible throwing the football. And if you could have some of his ability to evade and to run and use him as a runner and some of those things, I just have concerns that's going to be there. So I'm a little lower on Daniel Jones than you are, but I've got him at 27.
I can't believe the phrase to me was just said, I'm a little lower on Daniel Jones than you are. I am a legendary Daniel Jones hater, but I do just have to give him some credit for what he did last year. I feel like I'm leaning a little bit too much on like I guess if you showed me a good stretch in the last year or two over some of the other guys on the bottom of this list. So that's kind of why I went with Jones a little higher. I do get the argument of, well, if he can't run this year, then he's probably more like 26 or 27 on my list. So I do get that for sure. I just don't want to. It's a weird situation. I almost feel like if you're Daniel Jones, he's going to have to kind of like throw caution to the wind and run no matter what, as long as he hasn't like lost all of the athleticism. And I don't think my guess would be that probably isn't the case. My guess would be that he probably will be able to run fine. The risk is re-injury. But I think if you're Daniel Jones, you probably just have to be like, if I get re-injured, I get re-injured. I just got a pretty big bag anyway. So I need to be competent and try to help the team win games. And the only way he's going to do that is if he runs. So
he needs to call up Jackson Dart. He needs to call up Jackson Dart and be like, hey, so how do I get into the mindset of being completely reckless and not caring about injuring myself? How can I learn to play like you do?
He needs to call up Russell Wilson and get concussion water to fix him. But yeah, I guess it's not concussions of him as much. It's the legs. But yeah, it'll be interesting. The Colts, I think they're probably just going to be like a 7 or 8 win team. But I do think that they are one of those teams that has, we talk sometimes about teams that we think has a very short range of outcomes, where it's like, I can't really see them winning less than 7 games, and I can't really see them winning more than 10. I don't have a team on the top of my head for that. But Indy's one of those teams that I think has a really wide range of outcomes. Like if you told me Indy goes 4-13 this year and Daniel Jones never got healthy, and Sauce, the trade was a disaster, he's disappointing, didn't fully recover from the injury last year, all this stuff, they didn't have the infusion of young talent, lost some pieces on offense, whatever you want to say happens, they kind of crash out. I could see that. Now, if you wanted to tell me Shane Steichen does an amazing job and this team goes out and actually wins 11 or 12 games, Daniel Jones is like just fine. And he's healthy looking and looks how he looked in the first half of last year. Jonathan Taylor's running for 1,800 yards, all that stuff. Like I could see that a little bit too. Like I think I'm ultimately going to say they're 7-10ish, but I think they have a wide range of outcomes.
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling. Let's go to your number 26, Mark. We've already got mine on the board. You have Bryce Young at 26. I've got him at 24. It feels like he's a guy that has still played well enough to enter the next year as a starter for a small stretch at the end of a season. And then he comes into the next year and doesn't play well until he's on the hot seat, and he plays just well enough to buy another year. That seems to be Bryce Young's career arc so far. So what are your thoughts on Bryce Young and the Panthers moving forward? And do you think he can develop into that quarterback for them, or is it just going to sort of be that same cycle?
I think the Panthers would be better off if Bryce Young was worse. I really do, because I think he's in the kind of QB NFL purgatory. And the little preview for our eventual previews, I'm pretty high on the Panthers this year in terms of their roster. And last year, I kind of nodded towards Seattle as the elite defense that I thought would take a leap. And I'm kind of doing that to Carolina. Like Carolina was a fine defense last year, but a lot of young pieces, a lot of additions. I think they're going to be an elite defense. I'm predicting Carolina to win like 9 games this year. And what's really scaring me about that is Bryce Young. I mean, he could absolutely torpedo that and torpedo their season. I understand they won 8 games, or I don't know if they won 8 or 9 games this year, but whatever it was. But there is just so many games where he is so incompetent. Week 16 against Seattle, obviously a good defense, but 14 for 24 for 54 yards and a pick. Week, I think it's 11 against New Orleans, not some world beater defense. 124 yards and a pick, 17 for 25. The week before that against Green Bay, they won this game somehow, 16-13, but 11 for 20 for 102 yards and a pick. The week before that, 15 for 25 for 138 yards and a touchdown. Like, there is just too many games below 140 passing yards on this list, especially when you're Bryce Young and you've never ran for 50 yards in a game. Like, his high last year was 49 rushing yards in a game. So it's not like he's giving you a lot of this production on the ground that kind of supplements the lack of the passing game, or even you could argue like helping the running back be more efficient by utilizing his legs as a decoy. He's not doing that. So I just like, but then again, he shows up in the playoffs against LA and plays really well. He played really, really well in that Rams game. I guess not as well statistically as it felt watching the game, but 21 for 40, 264 yards and a touchdown and a pick. He ran for a touchdown as well, but it felt even more impressive than that, because that he was kind of keeping them in that game. It felt like the best game of his career that I had seen, at least in a big spot. So he's another one. Hard to rank, but I find myself wanting to put him lower on the list than higher if I was going to tinker with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling then. Let's go to number 25. Oops, I'm on the wrong year.
Same guy?
I pulled up last year's ranking so I could compare, and then I was about to read off last year's 25.
Where did we have Bryce Young last year?
Last year I had Bryce Young at 19. You had him at 22.
Okay. I'm actually surprised that I had him that high and I've dropped him this much.
Well, to be fair, last year's ranking, there were only 26, so.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because we did not rank J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., Tyler Shuck, Cam Ward, Drake May, or Caleb Williams.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
So, okay, at 25, we do not have the same guy.
Oh, okay. Wow,
so
I'm surprised
let's talk about yours first. You have Malik Willis at number 25. I got him at number 22.
Wow. Shame. The big Malik Willis guy. There's definitely, I kind of wanted to put him at 24, but I felt bad using projection just because we've seen so little of Malik Willis. But I'm excited about what I've seen. I've been consistent that if you were going to swing at any quarterback this offseason that you were a team with an opening, it would have been Malik Willis. So he probably should have been 24 on my list, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, this ranking is a little bit about Malik Willis in that I like what he did last year. I'm excited to see. Well, I was excited to see what he was going to do before the Dolphins decided to blatantly tank, and now I know he's going to be terrible. But it's more of a function of I would just rather have him than the guys that I have below him more than anything about him. I would have liked to have seen what he could do given a fair shot. He's obviously not going to get that this year, and that stinks. But it's more about I would just rather have him than Bryce Young or Cam Ward or the couple of guys that we haven't revealed off of my list yet.
Malik Willis's agent should be not only fired, but arrested. Like, why did he funnel him to Miami for less money than we thought Willis was going to get, by the way? How does Willis not end up in Arizona where there's at least pieces around you? You have Jeremiah Love. You have a couple good receivers. How does he not end up in Atlanta where you have Bijan, you have Drake London, now you have Stefanski? How does he not end up even with the Jets? I think would be a better spot, a much better spot than Miami, or at least one you could see him building on a little bit more. You have Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, a decent offensive line. Like, I don't know how you end up funneling him to Miami if you're his agent or if you're Malik Willis just deciding to go there. I understand he had the connection with the Green Bay GM and the who's the guy they hired? I'm totally blanking on his name. Hafley,
Yes.
the head coach from Green Bay, the DC from Green Bay. Obviously, there's probably some sort of relationship there with Willis, and everybody who's been around Willis is a great guy. So, and I get why the guys in Miami would want him. I just don't get why Malik Willis was so loyal to those guys that he went to Miami. Maybe the interest in him wasn't as high from those other spots that I mentioned. If that's the case, those teams I think should have been more interested in him, but really feel bad for him because he's going to be benched by week 8 and he's probably not going to get another chance. He's going to have to go be a backup again. And I think that's unfair. I really do think he's worth giving a chance to based on the limited amount we've seen.
Yeah, it's a tough break for him. He should have had a shot to go play somewhere. I think he's got the potential to be a good player. Something I really thought about him coming out of the draft, and he never really got a shot where he got drafted either in Tennessee. So maybe it'll be one of those things where you can clearly tell, like, hey, he's a solid player just in a bad situation, and he'll get another shot. But we'll see how that plays out. Let's keep it rolling here. At number 25, I have Kyler Murray. You have him up at 22. This is one of those things where it's like the first round talent, the athleticism is still there. There's obviously a lot of concerns about his football IQ and the time that he's willing to put into that. And there's certainly been issues with his height as it relates back to Arizona. And coach that had the best shot to make him work out probably landed with him in Cliff Kingsbury, and it didn't work out. Now he gets a redemption opportunity with Kevin O'Connell, and we'll see if he's able to make that work out. But, at the end of the day, I think he's been in the league long enough that some of that talent is still tantalizing, but it's starting to fall off a little bit just after the years of mediocrity. And so I would rather have a guy like Malik Willis than a guy like Kyler Murray. But I'd rather have Kyler Murray than a guy like J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, I feel like I probably should have put Kyler 23. Honestly, I feel like I probably should have put Daniel Jones above him just because Jones probably showed more recently. I have some. There's a feel. The last couple weeks or so, or maybe days or so, I should say. I feel like I've started to see the upside with Minnesota a little bit more. I was diving into I was trying to rank defenses for this one little thing I was doing, and Minnesota, I was looking at last year's results, and Minnesota's defense was ranked way higher than I remembered even. And I know Flores is a demon and is great, but I thought that they dropped off a little bit more than they had. Their rankings were still insanely high. And they won 9 games last year. It made me think, like, I really do think they upgraded at quarterback. What if Kyler does kind of take them back to that 11 or 12 win range? And then I kind of looked at the roster and the personnel it never seemed good enough to do that. But it didn't seem good enough to do that with Minnesota when Kirk was doing it, or a couple of those years with Minnesota. So I've kind of the last couple of days been like a little higher on the Vikings and a little higher on some of. I'm a fantasy guy, so I have Justin Jefferson a little higher than consensus on those lists. I feel like I might be getting poisoned by that a little bit. I might have put Kyler a smidge too high based on some of the new Vikings optimism I have that I think is probably fake. I think by the time it's time to predict me, giving records out, they're probably going to be 8-9. But yeah, I have a little newfound Vikings offense optimism after last year's JJ McCarthy disaster.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep rolling. Number 24, you have Aaron Rodgers. I have him at number 20. Talk to me about Rodgers.
I'm surprised you talk about Rodgers. Actually, I'm surprised you have him as high as you do.
Yeah, I just think it is what it is with Rodgers at this point. Like he clearly should have retired a couple of years ago. At what he is, I think he's too afraid to get hit. I think he gets the ball out too quick, but he's going to give a certain floor to your offense because he's still a smart player. He'll still distribute the ball quickly. I just think there's some physical limitations. And on top of that, I just don't want to get hit. And so that starts to creep in. So I don't love Aaron Rodgers. I actually actively dislike Aaron Rodgers, but I'm ready for him to retire so football media can no longer talk about him anymore, which is crazy because if you told me that, like, watching him play 5, 6, 7 years ago, this is the place Aaron Rodgers would be, I would not have believed you. Just the height that he's fallen from. But I just feel like he's not going to be a reason that your football team actively loses games like some of the people below him on this list I think will be.
Yeah, he was honestly, now that I'm looking at the stats here, he's honestly a little better than I thought last year. But it's just, there's too many games where he just doesn't have a chance. If the pass rush is getting at him and he's feeling froggy and he doesn't want to stay in the pocket and he's just getting rid of things right away, there's just too many games they just don't have a chance. So I feel like I've said on a lot of these guys, I should have ranked him higher. I should have ranked him lower. I think I feel good about this spot that I put Rodgers in.
Well, it is always good when you rank a player, and then when we're talking about the ranking, you're like, you know what? I think that was a good spot to put him.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't think I could put him lower. I think Jones and Kyler have a little bit more recent highs that I can buy into believing could come again. I think I nailed it. Good job, Mark.
All right. My number 23 is your number 19. It is Tyler Shough. This is a guy that I'm open to looking back halfway through the season and saying, you know what, I was too low on Tyler Shough, because I do think he did a good job in a bad situation last year. He gets the same play caller this year with Kellen Moore in year 2. I just need to see more from him. And so, he's a second-year player too, right? No,
he was
third year?
A rookie last year, yeah.
Yeah. So this is another guy that I dislike ranking second-year players. But it is what it is. That's what Mark made me do for this exercise. And so I've got him at 23, and I'm very open to him moving quite a bit throughout the early and mid parts of this season. I just need to see more from him. So I was impressed by what he did last year. If he had been ranked on my list last year, he would have probably been at the very bottom. And so he moved himself up quite a bit in not the best situation last year. I'm very interested to see what he does in year 2.
Yeah, I'm obviously I need to find the right mother shucker. I don't know. I don't know what the right fan club name for the Shucks are, but he had 9 starts last year. And the Saints, I feel like I'll reference QB wins a lot, which will infuriate some. But they went 5-4 in those games after winning 1 game in their first 8 weeks. So I do think that that's relevant, that this team that was losing every single week, when he takes over, they became competitive and started winning football games. And it's not just that they were winning football games. He had 69% completion percentage. He was throwing for 250 passing yards a game. If you look at if you would have taken his 9 starts and extrapolated them over a full season, he would have thrown for 4,261 yards, only 19 touchdowns. He didn't score that many touchdowns. And he actually would have ran for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns as well, though. So he really, and actually there's some metrics out there that aren't as kind to Shuck. I guess I don't know if it's EPA or CPOE. I think there's some stuff out there that says that his run was actually a little overrated relative to some of the counting stats. But I'm just saying eye test here. I ended up betting on a lot of those Saints games for some reason at the end of last year, whether it's overs or betting the Saints or betting Shucks. I think I was betting Shucks yards at one point. I was just really impressed every game, it felt like. And there were so many games where maybe it was a close game at the end of the game. And I'm not telling you he beat world beaters. You look through the schedule, he beat the Panthers twice, and obviously the Panthers made the playoffs, but they weren't a great team. He beat Tampa, who was an 8-win team. And then he beat the Jets and the Titans. So I'm not telling you he beat any good teams, but even some of the games against some of the good teams, I did think he looked pretty competent. So I was really impressed by Shuck last year. There's a chance we look back at this and that looks ridiculous and the bottom falls out from under him. I'm buying it, though. I think him and Kellen Moore are going to be a good kind of duo, and I expect the Saints to win that division.
All right. Let's keep rolling. 21. This is one of the ones we talk about that I mentioned earlier. We have the same guy in the same spot. We both have Jackson Dart at 21. Fun rookie season. I hope Giants fans enjoy it because I feel really confident it's not going to last because of the way that he plays football. But fun player. He made a bad team interesting to watch last year, and there's something to be said for that. His play style will have to change dramatically if he's going to have a long NFL career, and maybe he'll roll that out in year 2. You know, maybe with new coaching staff, we'll really work with him on some of those things. But fun player to watch. Again, going to have to be some pretty big adjustments if it's going to last, though.
Yeah, talk about a guy who's all over the board. I will say at the end of the year, he was pretty bad in some of those games. But what I will say about that is Neighbors have been taken away and hurt. Cam Scadaboo had gotten hurt and taken away. When he had Scadaboo out there, and obviously when he had Neighbors out there too, they were pretty interesting. But especially him and Scadaboo were able to create a pretty good running attack. Obviously, they had a great game against the Eagles. He put up 195 yards and a touchdown. And also ran for 58 yards and a touchdown. The next week against Denver, they had that crazy game where they did they blow the lead, or did Denver blow the lead and then barely win? I forget exactly what happened there, but one of the teams came from way behind in that game. He had another great game later on against Washington, a great game against Vegas, great game against Dallas. He also had a game where he went 7 for 13 for 33 yards and a pick and ran for 20 yards. So he did have a couple bad games. Besides that one game where he totally was terrible against Minnesota, he has that classic mobility trait of giving your offense generally a pretty high floor because of his rushing. Now, the flip side of that is, how does that floor matter if he's in the blue tent every other week? So he's an interesting one. The Giants are another hard team, I think, to predict this year, because I think all signs generally would point to them being a 4 or 5 or a 6-win team, a bad team. But I think if Dart's healthy for 11, 12 games, I think he's going to be competent enough to win half of them. Or however many games Dart plays, I think he's probably going to go 6-6 or 5-7, something around that number, 7-7, 6-8, whatever that number is. So that makes me kind of want to put them at 7 or 8 wins. Which I think is probably above what their roster is on a lot of spots on that team. But I do think Dart's going to give them a pretty high floor. And Harbaugh.
Yeah. All right. We're almost 40 minutes into the podcast, and we're not halfway through yet. So we may have to decide on the fly here, Mark, if we're going to get more brief or if we're going to break this into 2 episodes.
I think we can get more brief.
All right. I'm good either way. Let's go to a guy. You have him at number 20. I have him at number 17. It is Baker Mayfield. Talk to me about Baker.
So you said, are we factoring in injuries, right? And It's an interesting thing. Normally you'd think about that with maybe Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or a couple other guys that you could throw out there, Jackson Dart, so some other names. Baker's an interesting one because he's not a guy who misses games.
Yeah,
That's not
but he
what we're
plays hurt
talking
all the
about.
time.
But yet we have seen, I think, 3 times in the past 6 years where he plays through an injury and is dreadful, or at least pretty bad at certain points. And I think at this point, you have to kind of build that into what Baker is. He's an undersized guy who kind of plays with that swagger and he'll run guys over and he's going to go out and try to fight for every yard. And we love that about him. I think we've talked on this show about how much we both love Baker and we love how he plays the game. I think he's funny. I genuinely, people were all upset about, there was the clip going around him crap talking Jalen Carter and Quinyon. He does that to everybody. Like it just doesn't bother me with Baker. I like all the stuff on the side. I like that he creates these beefs and feuds with people. It makes things interesting. And I like it as an NFL fan. But I do think when talking about him as a player and when ranking him and when he's going to have an upcoming, I think he's a free agent this year, you have to factor in that half the seasons he's going to be hurt and not hurt enough to get taken out and hopefully find a replacement. Hurt enough to ruin your season, though, by playing through it. And he's tough and he's going to play hurt. But in some ways that hurts you. He needs to realize that it's hurting his status as a quarterback to continue playing through these injuries at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy that he's the guy that willed the Bucs to victory several times in the first couple weeks of the season. But he's also the guy who put the ball in harm's way far too many times. I mean, just way too much. And so that's sort of the twin sides of the same coin with Baker. He will do things that you shouldn't be able to do. Some of those comebacks they had early in the season where we talked about it, it's like this, it's insane the way he's just able to will this team to comebacks and to victory, but also sometimes they're in those holes because he's reckless with the football and he fumbles and some of those things. And so you mentioned the injury stuff. I love listening to Baker talk. I love watching him play football, but you can't have him a lot higher on this list at this point in time because of those exact things that you pointed out. So,
yeah.
Okay,
Apparently we have comments. My Riverside studio is broken. I can't get it. I'm stuck in the studio chat. I can't get out of that. So I don't know if we have comments if you want to throw them up on the screen. But
well, the studio chat is. Oh no, maybe that's not. I don't know. I thought that's where the comments popped up because it's the only one I have, but. Maybe not.
Well, after the next one, I'll go in and read them out if there's anything worth saying in there.
Okay. Let's keep rolling then. Let's go to my number 19. It's number 16 for you. It's Bo Nix. So this is our first guy officially that either of us have in the top half. I'm at 19, you're at 16. Nix's stats look good, but they're volume related. So Bo Nix plays well from a clean pocket. He does not drive the ball downfield. He avoids sacks, but he doesn't generate explosive plays. And so you look at last year, he ends the year 8th in passing yards, but by far the most passing attempts. He was 20th in yards per attempt. He is basically a guy who plays with a brilliant offensive mind, is a check down Charlie, and avoids sacks and relies on a good defense to win football games. And you can go a long ways with that, like we saw. I know I saw some hubbub on Twitter when other people were releasing QB rankings and Broncos fans hated Bo Nix being this low. He's just a solid, average starting quarterback. And that's kind of where I have him. I'm open to moving him up some if he starts to do a little bit more, but the Broncos' success was not Bo Nix related. It was defense and Sean Payton related, in my opinion. And there's things that he does, like avoiding sacks is a really good trait of his. That's a floor raiser, though, not a ceiling raiser. He does things to mitigate negative outcomes, but there's nothing about his game that helps create explosive plays, that drives the ball downfield, that does some of those things that you want from a quarterback that you would have a little higher on this list.
I'm at the point where I'm kind of having to throw away some of my Bo Nix, like misbelieving from the past, because when I put together this list, I don't think I can make an argument for Nix below 17. So I was tossed between Nix and Darnold at 16, 17, not to give that away. But I ended up going with Bo over Sam. So I think they're in a kind of similar spot. And I actually think Bo is a little better and a little more impressive. I thought he was really good in that playoff game that they won. And then unfortunately, he's hurt and doesn't get to play for a chance to go to the Super Bowl, which I think we now know he would have made. But stepping up in that Buffalo game, throwing for almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and obviously he threw the pick. I don't even really remember the pick, but I thought he was really, really good in that game and really impressive in a game that I did not think Denver was going to win. I thought Buffalo was going to win. And I don't want to over-index on a playoff game, but we are also talking about a guy in Bo Nix that I know that Shane cringes inside anytime I mention fantasy, but Bo Nix is like back-to-back, like a top 10 quarterback for fantasy now, or maybe top 12. I'd have to look at the numbers, but a starting quarterback for fantasy. This is a guy in his rookie year threw for almost 3,800 yards, 29 touchdowns. The last year he throws for 3,900 yards and 25 touchdowns. And I think I could overlook some of that, but he's 24-10. Over the 2 years, 2 playoff appearances, and I think he would have went to the Super Bowl last year if he was healthy. So I actually think they talk on heed the call. It used to be an around the NFL tree that they would try to find that the equator of quarterbacks, kind of that equilibrium of this guy. Anything below this guy, you don't have the guy. Anything above this guy, you have the guy. If you have this guy, you have a guy. He might not be the guy, but it's an interesting kind of equator. To me, I think that line is probably the Bo equator, the Knicks equator, whatever that line is. I think he is probably just smack dab in the middle of the rankings. You could argue it for Sam Darnold too.
It's the new Kirk Cousins line.
The Sam equator. Darnold. I don't know. I don't have a fan. I'm trying to name a lot of stuff on the fly here in this episode, and I don't know. I should stop probably. Some of the comments here, by the way, Eric said Kryler clears JJ McFartP. So I had to throw that out there. SH said, "Woo, this guy is cooking on Bo Nix," because he's a Bo Nix hater. That's about you. He was propping you up. Those are some of the guys in the NFL Discord they've actually been having their own arguments about QB rankings the last 2 or 3 days, and I've been saying, well, you've got to listen to the pod to get mine. I'm not going to just put them out here, and so some of them are ready to pounce when I rank Jalen Hurts way too high. So that's what they're here for, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have emailed Riverside on the fly while Mark was talking, because I went over to YouTube and saw that it's not pulling in the comments. So hopefully they can get that fixed, but I'll keep YouTube up with an eye on comments as we go here. But let's continue moving here. At number 18, we have another one of those where we've got the same guy in the same spot. We both have CJ Stroud at number 18. What a fall from grace for CJ Stroud. Continues to trend in the wrong direction. You heard things last offseason after that disastrous playoff performance that the Texans were considering moving on. They've put him in a terrible ecosystem. He's constantly been pressured. They traded the only good offensive lineman they had and continued to make it worse. And so there's mitigating circumstances, but Stroud was dreadful last year. And he's got to turn it around, or he's not going to be a starting quarterback for a lot longer. And it's crazy. You know he can do it because of what we saw him do early in his career. And I mean, it's still early in his career, as long as he figures that out. But this is a guy who has just gone the wrong direction, and he needs some help. He maybe needs some offensive coordinator help, some offensive line help, some weapons that will stay healthy. But it's a big year. It's a make or break year, I think, for CJ Stroud in Houston.
This is one of the hardest ranks on the board. I think there's some people who could look at this and say, you're way underrating CJ Stroud. But I think the one that I felt more when I was ranking this, and maybe you could tell me who, and you said we only ranked 26 quarterbacks last year. Who were our QB 18s last year, out of curiosity? Because I feel worse about this QB 18 than I should.
I had Kyler Murray at 18. You had Tua at 18.
That's pretty bad. Never mind. So maybe I guess QB 18 is always a little bit like this. I felt like when I was going through it and ranking it, I was like, man, this is a guy who I thought should have got benched in the playoffs for Davis Mills. And I'm saying he's better than almost half of the quarterbacks in the NFL. that's concerning to a certain degree. But you also have to factor in, we are only, 2-3 years removed now from such a historic rookie season. And you don't want to give up on that, especially when Houston's had such a porous, there's a good word for you, offensive line and kind of a revolving door of offensive play callers a little bit. So you don't want to fully put it all on Stroud. But man, this was a hard one.
Yeah, it is. And again, he's another one of those guys that can move dramatically, but he's going to have to bounce back.
You put him a spot above, and I think that's defensible, and I have him 2 spots below. If you're Baker Mayfield and you're seeing that you're ranked below CJ Stroud on QB lists out there, you've got to be like, woof, I've got to get my act together. Because I'm like, it's just, he hasn't proven a lot. This is a guy who really has crapped the bed a couple times. So, yeah.
All right, let's keep rolling here. You have at number 17, Super Bowl winning quarterback, Sam Darnold. I have him at number 5. No, I'm just kidding. I've got him at number 15. So Darnold has 2 consecutive great seasons.
Yes.
Now, the Minnesota one objectively ended terribly and called into question that whole season. But, was he just a KOC merchant? He still can't handle pressure. Well, then he went to Seattle. And obviously, Clint Kubiak, highly thought of, he gets hired to be the head coach of the Raiders. But not a guy with Kevin O'Connell's street cred going into the season. And he had a fantastic year in Seattle. They win the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Super Bowl, he didn't play super well. The defense just dominated. But he was really good throughout the season. He was especially great utilizing play action and throwing the ball deep. This is a guy that you feel good about him being a quarterback with a team with the defense like that and some of those things. He's not a quarterback that you win because of, but he's a good, solid starting quarterback that obviously has shown he can get you to a Super Bowl and win it. And so I had Darnold at 15. You've got him at 17.
Yeah, this was just, he easily could be. He was actually 16 for me when I initially did it, and I flipped Bo and him. I was really thinking about that Bo Nix versus Sam Darnold thing, and I ended up
Bad
flipping.
call. Bad call.
Yeah. You're pretty strong on that 15 versus 19. We've talked about this before. I think when we've went through Denver games, I think I'm generally a little bit more positive on Bo than you are. So that doesn't surprise me that I'm a little bit higher on him. But this is still a guy in Sam Darnold who was 3rd in picks last year, threw 14 interceptions, only less than Geno and Tua Tagovailoa. He's not the thing we were saying about him going into the playoffs and why I was concerned that maybe, he could throw them out of the championship race was that he's not your traditional game manager. He's not your guy who's going to go out there and throw for 180 yards and go 18 for 24 and not turn the ball over. He throws some dumb picks and he really goes for it. He's a gunslinger in some ways, and that'll get you some good results like you got last year. And him and JSN obviously excelled, and he was able to fit the ball in a lot of tight spaces and didn't cost him too much to hurt the team. Still threw 14 picks, and it obviously gets to the playoffs, and he played great for a lot of it. And then in the Super Bowl, they did more than enough defensively that it didn't really matter what he did. So, yeah, I understand thinking that 17 is a bit too low, but I didn't want to overreact. I do think any of the top 16 on my list probably would have won the Super Bowl in that situation.
Yeah. All right. My number 16. I guess we want to go ahead and finish this out, or do we want to break it into 2?
Yeah, let's finish it out. Let's do it.
Okay. At number 16, I have Brock Purdy. You have Brock Purdy at number 14. I think Purdy missed 8 games last season. There was a point, where Mac Jones comes in, and we had a discussion on our week reviews, like, should Mac Jones just stay the starter? Purdy comes back and he plays well after that. So he played well when he was on the field. He's good at mitigating pressure. He's good at staying accurate. He plays in a good ecosystem with Shanahan as the designer, but the team's always injured, so he's constantly having to deal with churning pieces. I feel like Mac Jones playing as well as he played sort of makes you question system versus QB talent. But I will say, Brock Purdy's really good at mitigating pressure, and he's good at staying accurate when under pressure. I think those are some of his best traits. So I've got him at 16. You've got him at 14. And I just kind of think that's about the right landing place for him.
I don't have that much to say on Purdy other than what you said. He was a guy who I kind of hated on early on in his career, and when people were trying to prop him up as like a top 5, top 10 guy. And then I feel like as the NFL public has soured on him, I feel like I've become more impressed when I watch him over the last 2 years. You are correct. When Mac Jones played, he played really well. But I don't think that should erase the fact Purdy played really well when he was healthy last year. So, yeah, it's a interesting one to rank. I don't have much of a problem with where you put him.
Yeah, there's always an element of trying to separate player from scheme, from all those different things. And that's why there's never a perfect way to do these. You kind of got to try to parse that out. But yeah, so your number 15 is number 13 for me. I think this is another guy that's difficult to rank. It's Jared Goff. And so I think Jared Goff's the ultimate point guard. He plays on time in a tremendously talented offense.
Tremendously.
And he puts up big numbers. He had the second fastest time to throw last year, so the ball's coming out fast. He's highly accurate. I don't have much more to say about why I've ranked him where I ranked him, other than to say, if you go back and watch like rookie or second year Jared Goff to now, it's just incredible how much he's improved and changed as a player. It really is a testament to the fact that NFL teams give up on players too early sometimes, because if you can continue to get reps, you improve as a player. And Jared Goff has gotten so much better from where he was. And Sean McVay is a big part of that. Having Sean McVay allows him to stay a starter for as long as he did, because if he goes somewhere else, he's probably a backup in the NFL at this point, and he doesn't get those reps. But with reps, guys improve. And Jared Goff, who's a guy that, McVay did ultimately throw him away, but he's continued to remain a starter, and he's improved so much to the point that he's number 13 on my list, and he's got a really impressive career arc.
Yeah, the Goff thing, that the chat that I mentioned that some of the people we have are commenting from are big Goff guys, big Goff believers. Part of that is we have a Lions fan in there who hates him. There was like a Stafford love. They loved Stafford, and once they traded Stafford, they took all that anger from losing Stafford out on Goff. So we troll them by acting like Jared Goff is Joe Montana. But I do think Jared Goff gets a little overrated on some of these lists sometimes. I know the stats are fantastic. 4,400 yards, 4 straight years. He doesn't miss time. Lions have won a lot of games in that stretch. Obviously not as much this year, but still a lot of games. They made the playoffs multiple times. I will say the guy had Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, and a great offensive line. And until last year, probably like a top 3 offensive play caller in the sport. I do think we saw, obviously the numbers, the raw counting numbers still really good last year. I do think we saw a little bit of a step back for sure from Goff in terms of the eye test and watching him without Ben Johnson around. Yeah. And I think he very easily could be, he could be 12 or 13 on my list pretty easily, but he fell to 15.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep rolling. My number 14 is Jayden Daniels. You have him up at number 10. This is another cautionary tale on ranking a guy after his first season, because we did that last year and we both had him number 6. Now, he is hard to rank because his second year was marred by injuries, and so you've got to take that into account. But in the time he played, he struggled against the blitz in a way that he didn't as a rookie, and he just wasn't the same playmaker. And so there's questions about, was it a one-off? The Commanders have bad playmakers. is that it? Did defenses adjust? Was he playing injured and that impacted his playmaking ability before the ultimate injury? And those are all questions we don't necessarily have an answer to at this point in his career. But if I'm just thinking about all the concerns I had about Daniels pre-draft, they didn't come true as a rookie, and they all came true in his second year. And my fear is that that will be kind of what his career looks like going forward. And so I maybe have him, I have him lower. His ceiling is far higher than I have him ranked. But just off of the 2 data points we have right now, one of those data points last year is what I feared when he was coming out, and it's come true 50% of the time. And so I have a hard time believing that's not going to be what his career looks like, more so than that rookie season.
I'm putting a lot less stock into last year in general than Shane. I think some people that are lowering Jaden on these lists. I said on our pod the other day that I would take Caleb going forward over Jaden. But as of right now, this season, while I think Jaden still has how many yards did he rush for his first year? I had it right here. It's 891. I think he still has 900 plus yard rushing upside. And I think he's pretty rare in history as quarterbacks to have that rushing upside. While he has that, I think I'd still give him the nod over Caleb. I just know that that's not going to last that long, probably. So I would take Caleb long term, and I think Caleb is a better project, especially the growth we saw year 1 to year 2. I think you see the growth more, whereas Jaden, I think, kind of came fully formed. He was pretty old when he came into the league also. But I'm just choosing to not put as much stock in last year outside of just general injury risk. I think that was kind of assumed anyway. We talked about a big reason he was QB3. There were a lot of reasons he was QB3 behind Caleb and May in the draft, but a big reason was I used to talk about he used to get hit like a Looney Tunes character in some of those things, and I was worried that could happen at the NFL. And maybe that fully didn't happen this year, but he certainly got hurt. So I think I'm less concerned about any play-related stuff from this year, more concerned about just general injury.
Now playing on Netflix, The Hawk. From the mind of Will Ferrell.
Oh, mama, I'm back!
Comes a new original series.
Get ready. That's it. Did I stutter?
When an iconic pro golfer
Lonnie,
Hawk!
takes one last swing at greatness,
you were a big shot golfer.
I still am a big shot golfer.
no one
Dad, I'm the Hawk now.
will stand in his way.
That's how it's done.
The Hawk, now playing only on Netflix.
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling. At number 13, you have Jordan Love. I have him up at number 8. So that's a pretty big discrepancy for this high on the list. Talk to me about Jordan Love.
I'm done overrating Jordan Love on these lists. I'm done with it. He's the guy I've zeroed in on as getting ranked above Jalen, who I have the biggest problem with. For a lot of people out there, there's a lot of names that come up that are above Jalen, and we've talked about some of them already. And I have problems with them to a varying degree. Jordan Love has never won 10 games in a season. He's 9-8, 9-6, 9-5-1. He's Mr. 7 seed. It's been a 7 seed 3 straight years with the Green Bay Packers. And I'm not saying it's not all about QB wins. It's just too inconsistent. And at this point, it's 2 straight years that he's missed some time due to injury also. It's inconsistent to the point of I don't know what he is anymore, because we have the Toyotathon jokes about Jordan Love where he really shines down the stretch, but he has some long stretches of pretty incompetent play at times. And I'm done ranking him as high as we do until he either has a monster statistical season where he puts it all together, or he goes out and wins 12 or 13 games, or he goes out and has playoff success beyond one game. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I need one of those 3 things to happen with Jordan Love. I don't hate Jordan Love. I've been a long proponent of his talent. I think he is very talented. I just need to see him put that talent together at this point.
Yeah. Jordan Love led all quarterbacks last season in EPA per dropback. And he did so with his number 1 weapon, Tucker Kraft, missing over half the season. His number 2 weapon, Christian Watson, missing almost half the season. And the rookie first-round receiver, they took Matthew Golden, just not being a good football player. And so you look at some of the circumstances he's had in terms of his weapons. I think he played really well last year. The highs have always been there. The lows, the inconsistencies have also been a major issue. And I thought he was a lot more consistent last season. And so I think Jordan Love is a really good quarterback. I obviously still want to see it translate more into team success and statistical output. And, you know, in some ways, things are really slanted in his favor because he's got a really good schematic coach, but he's never had the weapons really that you would like to see him have to work with. I don't think that really changes this year, but I'm still pretty high on Jordan Love, and I think the step in consistency and his efficiency last year, with a lot of those things stacked against him, still have me pretty high on Jordan Love overall.
It's just like, he's always been an EPA darling for sure. He was 17th in passing yards per game last year, behind guys like Jacoby Brissett, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Like, there's some weird names in there for passing yards per game. Now, he had 23 touchdowns and six picks, so that's pretty good, obviously. But I just need to see him take that step and be more consistent. And what you mentioned with the weapons, I'm sympathetic to a certain degree, but I also think Matt LaFleur is like a top 5 play caller in the sport, or maybe top 7 or 8. So it comes out in the wash a little bit for me. They've always had a pretty good O-line also. So I feel like the good O-line and the play calling kind of washes out with the lack of weapons to me a little bit, but I do understand that great.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Number 12, I have Trevor Lawrence. You have him at number 11. Trevor Lawrence, he finishes last year on a tremendous hot streak. Second in passing grade from week 14 on. He had 15 big-time throws versus only 2 turnover-worthy plays, which is notable because my biggest issue with Trevor Lawrence over the first part of his career is that he's just been a bonehead. Like, he puts the ball in harm's way. I remember saying last year, my notes on Trevor Lawrence when we ranked him, and I ranked him at 13 last year, was it's time to grow up. Like, it's time to grow up and stop making these stupid plays that cost your team, because that's been what he's done a lot. And so he did that. It took him a lot of the year, but Liam Cohen, new offensive play caller, all that stuff, he hits his stride at the end of the year. And so the biggest thing for me with him is, can it continue? Hopefully that all changes as he gets more comfortable in Liam Cohen's offense. Hopefully last year's not just an anomaly at the end of the year, but I believe in the upswing of Trevor Lawrence, but I do have to fully see it before I'm willing to move him up into the top 10.
Trevor is a hard one to rank. He one of the hardest, one of the weirdest careers I can ever remember. I mean, he starts off with an all-time bad rookie year, probably not his fault at all, because he had Urban Meyer, obviously not focused on football. And then he starts 2022 slow. But the second half of 2022 into the first half of 2023, you put those like 16, 17, 18 games together, whatever that number is, you put those stats out there, it's insane. He looked like a no doubt top 5 guy in the sport at that time. Then he finishes 2023 abysmally. And then he was even worse in 2024. And you're thinking, did Carson Wentz, did he Carson Wentz himself? And Liam Cohen gets hired last year, and Trevor comes out and puts up 4,400 total yards, 38 total touchdowns, leading the Jags to a 13-4 divisional title. Then he had some pretty disastrous moments in the Jags' close playoff loss to Buffalo that I think has sort of erased the good feeling people had about Trevor going into the playoffs. And I think there's a couple guys we're probably outsizing one playoff result for at the end of the year, whether it's Trevor or Herbert or a couple other guys that I think probably are getting Drake May, even, which is funny to say about the guy who made the Super Bowl. But I think there's a couple young quarterbacks who are kind of getting, I feel like we're not appreciating or respecting how good their seasons were because of one game at the end of the season in the playoffs. But you mentioned his close to the year. His last 6 games, he had 1,750 total yards, 19 total touchdowns, and 1 interception. That is pretty incredible stuff. And he has shown kind of those 6 to 8 week stretches of looking like the best quarterback in the sport in a similar way to Jordan Love has. But I think he's put it together a little bit more. Like, I think Trevor finally put that all together last year a bit more than Jordan Love has done in one season. Whereas Trevor had the 4,400 yards, he had 13-4, or he went to the divisional title. He won a division. Sorry, I can't speak apparently. But yeah, Trevor was a hard one to rank. I had him 12 initially, and I bumped him above a guy who I think we're about to talk about.
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling then. Your number 12, my number 11. So we're right here in step is Caleb Williams. And before we talk about Caleb Williams, I just got to give a shout out to Isaac here in the chat. He is on you for every ranking that you have, and I'm loving reading it. I always love a good Mark roast in the chat. So shout out, Isaac. Don't know who you are, but appreciate all of your comments today. Caleb Williams, 12 for you, 11 for me. He made a leap in year 2 with Ben Johnson coming to town. Now, we're both very high on Ben Johnson, which is where this gets difficult. Like, you look at, Caleb Williams got better. Jared Goff got worse. Ben Johnson changed hands. Is this a Ben Johnson thing? How do you separate the scheme from the quarterback? And that's always difficult in these conversations. But he makes the leap in year 2 with Ben Johnson coming to town. Importantly, Ben Johnson's going to stay there because he's a head coach now. He still puts the ball in harm's way too often. He can get away with it a lot of times. He's got ridiculous natural arm talent. In terms of just natural arm talent, he's maybe like 3rd in the league behind like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. But the decision making needs to get better. He needs to play on time better. He needs to learn a little bit more on his limitations. There's a run last year of just clutch performances in the fourth quarter when it shouldn't needed to have gotten there. And so we can argue like clutch gene versus luck, small sample size. But Caleb Williams, I'm confident in Ben Johnson's ability to continue to work with him. But I can also see a scenario where we don't get lucky in the fourth quarter this year like we did last year, and you drop back. And so he's a wait-and-see guy like a lot of second-year guys are. But I'm a pretty big fan of Caleb Williams and the Ben Johnson pairing to go with it.
We're running super long, so I don't even have that much to add to that. I'll just ask, was Trevor a tough call for you at all, or was that not even something that came into play, really?
No, it was a tough call, especially given how Trevor played at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I ultimately put them the way I did because I think Williams has more natural talent.
I agree.
And there's a longer track record of Trevor being dumb with the football that I wasn't willing to entirely discount based on 1 month at the end of last season.
Yeah. No, it was really tough. I changed my mind on it like 2 or 3 times. I ended up going with Trevor. Yeah, that was the toughest call on my entire. I would say the 2 toughest calls that I had were really Trevor versus Caleb, and then Knicks versus Darnold.
Okay. All right, number 10.
You think I went wrong both times?
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with the chat. I think you're wrong. So
yeah, of course. By the way, I'm able to usually pick up who some of these people are from the Discord. I don't even know who Isaac is because he has some other name in the Discord probably. So I'm getting it from all directions. I don't even know where this one's coming from.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Create more burner accounts to chat negative things about Mark on these shows.
This is what you need them to come in when we're drafting stuff against each other so they can put me on tilt and have me all not focused on the draft. That's what you need.
And by the way, just since we're talking Discord, I did drop our team drafts from last week in my Patreon Discord, and people generally thought that I killed you in the draft. So just saying. We need to get some of our chatters today's opinion because I think they'd also be with us on that.
Send me the thing. I'll put it in there. The Google Doc. I'll put it in the Discord.
Okay, I'll do it, and you can report back next week. So,
okay.
Number 10. This is the most painful ranking for me. I hate this. I hate putting this guy here. But I've got Justin Herbert at number 10.
Wow! I thought you were going to say a different JH there.
Justin Herbert is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch in the NFL. The things that he can do on a football field are incredible. But he continues to put up absolute disastrous performances in the playoffs. Now, there were reasons for that last year. his offensive line was just a shell of itself with all of the injuries. But at the end of the day, when I can't put him higher until he does something when it matters. And for people that might be upset about me ranking Herbert at 10, I just want you to know that this hurts me more than it hurts you, because he's legitimately one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. And I just need him to go on a postseason run, and he will be significantly higher for me last year if he goes and plays well in a playoff game or two.
Here's my thing. There's a name on this list who hasn't been revealed yet, who I think you probably are going to have him in the same spot as me. Maybe not. I think we probably both have him at 9 if I'm guessing. But it feels funny to be punishing Justin Herbert for playoff success in like year 4 or 5 of his career, and then like Dak Prescott's top 9. Like I will say that about the Herbert versus Dak thing. Yeah, we both have Dak 9. Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured. Wow, so you're higher on Jalen than I am. That's funny.
So, I mean, with Dak, if the postseason didn't exist, Dak would be higher on this list too. Like, if postseason football didn't exist, Dak and Herbert are both top 5 on my list. Dak is awesome at every part of the game until it gets to the postseason, where he's traditionally melted down. And there's another quarterback that's going to be higher on this list, and Drake May, that I didn't knock for that as much because he's young and it happened once, but it's been a pattern with both Dak and Herbert. And so those two guys are both quarterbacks that I've traditionally been really high on. And I just got to see it in January before I can put them much higher.
We have a Chargers guy who has been on the show, Alex Insdorf. He's commenting along, by the way. He said, keep my QB's name out your mouth to Shane. He doesn't know that Shane has fought wars for Justin Herbert online on this podcast for years. This is a historic heel turn for Shane to put Justin Herbert all the way down at 10. I'm someone who I've been critical of Justin Herbert in the past, obviously. Last year was the year where I went the other way. You lost both tackles, and you're still able to go out there and put up 3,700 yards, lead them to the playoffs, win, 11 or 12 games, however many games they won. And people are really critical of this playoff performance. I was more critical of the ones previous to that. This was an O-line that was DOA. And I think what he accomplished getting to the playoffs, winning the amount of games with that O-line, I'm choosing to, I almost feel like if he went 9-8 and didn't make the playoffs, would people feel better about Justin Herbert than if he went won 11 games, went to the playoffs and had a bad playoff game? I think that might be silly. I don't know. Maybe I'm being silly by thinking that's silly, but I think that we're punishing Justin Herbert a bit too much for this specific playoff loss.
Yeah, well, yeah. For what it's worth, we both had Herbert at 8 last year, and so I started to drop him a little bit. It wasn't just last year; it's an accumulation. So, Alex, I'm sorry. I love Justin Herbert. I will never forget the Justin Herbert is better than Joe Burrow debates I had with Mark, and the instant he makes it to a conference championship game while Joe Burrow is on the sideline with yet another injury, I will begin to bang that drum again. So, okay. We've now reached the portion of the podcast where we make everybody mad because we're talking about higher quarterbacks where people are a lot more entrenched. This is the part where we really make people mad. At number 8, Mark, you have Jalen Hurts. I have him at number 7. So we're fairly close on Jalen Hurts. I've seen the super team merchant already in the chat. And here's what I'll say. We will learn a lot about Hurts this year. His ranking will probably change one direction it might not. It probably won't change up, but it could change down dramatically after this season. So he's got a new offensive coordinator again, new scheme. A.J. Brown's gone. The offensive line is degrading around him. And so all of the super team things we're going to find out this year. If Hurts is able to do what he's done in 2023 and 2025 this season with a new scheme, with a lesser offensive line, without A.J. Brown, with Saquon a year older coming off a not great season, then probably not, because it's Hurts and it's Philly and people get entrenched in things and echo chambers online, so it'll probably still be talked about the same way. But the pros for Hurts does not put the ball in harm's way. He's always near the bottom of the league I never know how to say this. The bottom of the league, the top of the league. He's always near like the lowest turnover-worthy play rate. And honestly, I think that's gone too far one direction. He could benefit from being a little more gunslinger. I think there's postseason consideration going on with him here, how he has performed in postseasons. There's not a lot of guys that have had the postseason. There's nobody below him that has had the postseason success that he's had. You could say Sam Darnold, but it was 1 year. Hurts has done it twice. I guess you could talk about Aaron Rodgers, but that was a long time ago. And so my 7, 8, 9, 10, a lot of what's tied into those is related to how performance has gone in the postseason. And so if Hurts has the year this year that he had last year, he probably won't be in my top 10 next year. But I think he deserves the right to prove himself once again.
Over the last 4 years, this will upset the QB staff, or the QB wins are not a stat people, but Jalen Hurts is 48-15. I mean, what are we talking about? This guy's QB 17 on an ESPN list. He's won a Super Bowl and went to another in the last 4 years. 54-18, including playoffs. Great timing by my wife to walk in on the Jalen Hurts part of this, where my dog's going to go nuts for the entire portion of it. So great timing. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, Mark's dog, also a noted Jalen Hurts hater. Just wanted to make his objection known there. Guys, I think we found Isaac, Mark's dog. Mark's dog is Isaac here.
My wife has never made a worse timing in my history of podcasting, I'd say, walking into a house or with the dog. So great job by her.
Well,
Mrs.
to
Henry
be fair, you
hot
didn't tell
seat.
her this was going to be an hour and 30-minute podcast.
Yeah, she probably did not expect that we'd be still on the show at 11:03. But the Jalen thing, it's never going to not amaze me the way he is disrespected. Jalen's disaster seasons are 11 wins, and usually winning a division or getting to the playoffs. Like, Jalen has never missed the playoffs in 5 years as a starter. By the way, that predates Saquon Barkley. That predates A.J. Brown. That predates Vic Fangio. It predates 100% of every player on the defense. Nobody was starting on the defense 5 years ago in 2021 when they were expected to win 6.5 games and they went to the playoffs in Jalen and Nick's first year. And I'm not saying 2021 as a factor. I'm just saying it's just funny that when these other quarterbacks have bad seasons or down years, they miss the playoffs or they miss a lot of games due to injury. Jalen, that doesn't happen. He misses 1 or 2 games to injury, or he goes 11-6 instead of 14-3. And I'm not saying QB wins are everything, but he also showed up, like you said, in the Super Bowl 2 times and played 2 of the best games of his life. And we've seen him outduel Josh Allen a couple of years ago in 2023 in regular season games. And you mentioned the playoff success. Nobody below Jalen has the regular season success that Jalen does from a team standpoint either. It's just repeatedly, he's always going to be disrespected.
Yeah, if you give me a regular season, I want Justin Herbert to be my quarterback. If you give me a playoff game, I want Jalen Hurts. And that's sort of where I'm at. So, again, maybe we will learn a lot this year about Jalen Hurts.
I agree with that. I was closer to putting Hurts 6th than 10, just to be clear to the haters out there. He couldn't be no lower than 8 on my list.
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 6. We both have Drake May. We've talked about the postseason considerations for Dak and Herbert. And Drake May had a terrible playoffs last year. And yes, the regular season schedule was easy, but he was ahead of schedule last season. And I just don't think we should throw all of that away because of poor playoff performances. He's a young player, first playoff appearances. He was elite throwing the ball outside the numbers last season. He was impactful as a rusher. He gets A.J. Brown, so he's got more receiving options this year. He's got another year starting under his belt. And so I was a big Drake May guy in the draft. I didn't want to rank him last year because I didn't think I could rank him as high based on his rookie season as I thought he should go. And that played out last year. And so I'm still a big Drake May guy. I'm really interested to see what he does in year 3.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty consistent on Drake May after year one. When Jaden Daniels went to the NFC Championship, I said I'll take him over Caleb and Jaden going forward. I still feel that way pretty confidently at this point. Last year, I don't think we've even. It's funny that a guy who made the Super Bowl, the playoffs became such a negative for him, but he played bad in all the games he played in the playoffs. And
to be fair, one of them was in a blizzard in the AFC Championship game.
I think two
and
of
then
them were
one of
bad
them
weather.
was against the best defense in football. And so, there's some like we can throw out his overall postseason stats, and I think people are quick to do that and not add some of that context. But yeah, I'm not willing to throw away my pre-draft eval, how I thought he played as a rookie and how I know he played in his second year, just over a couple of bad playoff performances.
Yeah. He led the league in completion percentage. He led while also leading the league in yards per attempt and air yards per attempt. You know how rare that is? Like, that's pretty insane stuff. He led the league in passer rating, led the league in QBR, threw for 4,400 yards, 31 touchdowns, only 8 picks. Also, like 8 picks when you lead those air yards numbers, like that's pretty incredible too. Being able to be that smart with the ball while moving the ball down the field so far and being such a great deep passer. Also, he has a lot on the ground too. 2 straight years where he rushed for over 400 yards. And yeah, I think that it's only going to keep getting better from here for Drake May. I think a lot of people are predicting a Patriots regression year, and I actually am too. I think they're going to win 9 or 10 games. But I think where that's going to come from is the defensive side of the ball. And I think, if anything, that might just push Drake's stats even a little better. So I've seen I talked about this last week, I think, but Drake May's fantasy value, I think, is actually being underrated. I think if anything, I think last year isn't maybe not the floor statistically, but I think it's closer to the floor than people think, especially adding A.J. Brown, and with the defense expected to be worse, I think they're only going to throw more. So I think Drake May's going to have a huge year. And if they're able to, eke out some close wins and win 12 or 13 games again, he's probably going to win MVP or could absolutely be in the running to win MVP.
Yeah. All right. My number 5 is your number 4. It's Joe Burrow. And honestly, with Joe Burrow, we're factoring in health. The best ability is availability, and Joe Burrow's suffered 3 season-ending injuries in 6 years. That just kind of is what it is. Tremendous talent, plays really well from the pocket. One of, if not the best processor in the league. He just can't stay healthy. And so when you're splitting hairs among the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, that's a pretty easy one to come off of. And so that's why I put Burrow at 5.
Yeah, I don't have too many problems with it, and we're going long. So I'll just let's keep it rolling, and maybe we can discuss it more as like an overall thing when we get forward.
All right. So your number 5 is Matthew Stafford. I've got Stafford at number 3. So with Stafford has always been an awesome player. You're going to say 2025 was a statistical outlier in terms of his production. And it was. But he has been so good for years. Like, yeah, the stars aligned and he got the counting stats in 2025. But he has been that level of player for a long time. He's got the Super Bowl ring in LA already. They're obviously making a strong push for another before he retires. I've been concerned about his health in the past and had him lower. And we haven't had the weird, he's getting epidurals because he's got spinal issues. And actually, he can't feel his fingers. We haven't gotten those stories yet this year. But even if we did, I would just stop buying him because it just seems to not matter once the season starts.
You did predict what I was going to say. I do think that 2025 is just such a statistical anomaly. And I put him 5th. Like, I'm putting him top 5. So I'm not saying I don't buy it at all. Obviously it happened, and it's pretty similar to what he did all the way back in 2021 statistically. But you look at 2022 through 2024, and the Rams went 21-18 in that stretch when Stafford played. It's not like they were a great team every year and kind of in that mix. I feel like they did drop off a little bit there after the Super Bowl until last year. And then last year he was incredible, but he threw for 1,000 more yards than the year before and more than doubled his touchdown production. He went from 20 to 46. Like, that late in a career, I don't remember ever seeing anything like that. And so I'm worried to fully vault him all the way up the list when it's just that we weren't thinking of him close to in the top 4. To me, the top 4 is just hard to penetrate. Really, is what it comes down to. He would probably need to do that for multiple years in this late in his career. I don't know if that's going to happen. Drake May is probably the only guy. Maybe Herbert if he won a Super Bowl. Herbert and May are really the only guys I could see possibly penetrating that top 4, really, and passing a Burrow, or I guess Lamar could regress pretty quickly. So we could see that potentially. But yeah, the Stafford over Burrow and Lamar is tough for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it. I don't want to give any more of my rankings. So let's sign off here and just leave these ambiguous. People can fill in the blanks however they want to. That sound good to you?
I'm curious to see where you have Mahomes.
I have Mahomes at number 4. You have Mahomes at number 2. And Mahomes is coming off the worst season of his career. He's regressed 3 years in a row. His production has dropped 3 years in a row. He tore his ACL and his LCL in week 15. And so there are some fall-off concerns. He's talked about in the past how the NFL went to too high and it made the game boring, and he hates that. And there's fall-off concerns. Is he going to adapt to those things concerns? There's some injury concerns coming off of that. What shape is he going to be in physically this year? Is he going to start the year? What's that going to look like? I mean, all of that said, the deck was stacked against him in terms of the offense last year because the Chiefs just continued to build their offense poorly. I'm not sure how that changes this year. Like, you still have Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and Xavier Worthy as your receivers. Like, the only way the construction of the offense meaningfully changed this year is bringing in Kenneth Walker. And so, is Kenneth Walker going to take over? And I mean, if so, it doesn't mean that Mahomes isn't good. I mean, I've got him at 4, but are we at the point? I just am concerned that maybe the game is starting to pass by Reed a little bit. Mahomes seems to be struggling to adjust. Certainly, there's considerations with his weapons and things, but you look at the guys that I have above him, and I just feel better about them. And health is a big part of that. If we were discounting health, I would flip him and Stafford. I would probably have him at 3, but the health's a big portion of it for me too.
Yeah, it's just, I actually don't think he was as bad as he was the year before, which is funny to say about a team that he went 15-1 the year before. His stats are almost as good despite playing 2 less games. He had only like 300 less yards, only 4 less touchdowns. Some of the EPA or some of the advanced metric stuff and air yard stuff is a little better. So I actually think he was a little better than he was the year before, but the team was a lot worse and he was less successful. So it probably does mean it's his worst year since they went 6-8 when he played. It's hard for me to say he's anything other than top 2, especially when Lamar and Burrow didn't take it from him last year. If Lamar stepped up last year and had a great year, then I probably would put Lamar 2. But because Lamar kind of had his worst year of his career, I guess not kind of, probably definitely was his worst year of his career, I put him 3. But I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with Lamar over Mahomes at all.
Yeah. All right. So you kind of touched on it here. You've got Lamar at 3. I've got Lamar at 2. And then, of course, that means we both have Josh Allen at number 1. But so Lamar, 2-time MVP. He's the most prolific running quarterback, or he's the most prolific runner at the quarterback position. I know running quarterback's a loaded thing sometimes, but most prolific runner at the position in league history. He's also not played in a Super Bowl, and there's been postseason struggles at times. And so that's how you want to factor that in and how you do all of that. But Lamar's awesome player, really excels throwing to the intermediate part of the field, running the football. They kind of topped out with Harbaugh there, and now they are under different management this year, and we'll see how that all plays out. But I've got Lamar at 2. You've got him at 3. What do you want to add on Lamar?
You said a lot. We'll find out a lot about Jalen this year. I think we'll find out a lot about Lamar this year. Like, I think it'll be really interesting. New offensive play caller, new head coach. He, I think, looked less athletic last year for the first time, where I started thinking about And he's a good enough passer now that he will be able to be a quarterback for a longer time than I think people thought. But in terms of his eliteness, he needs to come back out and show he's still Lamar Jackson and show that I definitely could see him, being 9, 10, 11 next year on the list if he continues to regress athletically. So it's so hard to predict with Lamar, but I hope he's able to get back to what he has shown he can be. He's 75-31 over his, or 76-31 over his career, and that's after going 6-7 last year in games that he played. So yeah, he's obviously been incredibly successful outside of the playoffs. I don't think that this Ravens team is a contender, to be honest. So I don't think we're going to be fixing that portion of the Lamar legacy this year, even though I think they have the highest win total in the NFL. But I just don't. You look at the roster, and I think they're going to be like a wild card team. That's irrelevant. But Josh Allen is my number one. Josh Allen, 83-33 over the last 7 years, 6 straight years with 40-plus total touchdowns. Has not missed a game due to injury in that entire stretch, which I think is important to point out. When Mahomes has missed time due to injury, Lamar has missed time due to injury, Burrow has missed time due to injury, same with Stafford. All those other guys in the top 5 have missed time over the last, 3-4 years. Josh Allen doesn't miss time, despite his aggressive running and his play style being kind of throw it to the wind. He doesn't miss time. He's sturdy and he's reliable, and you know what you're going to get from Josh Allen year in and year out. You're going to get a team that wins 11, 12, 13 games, and you're going to get 4,000 plus yards, and you're going to get 40 plus touchdowns total.
Yeah, he's a stud player. Ultimate dual threat. He holds the rushing touchdown record for quarterbacks. He's done everything except win a Super Bowl, which is the ultimate goal. But
is this the year, Shane?
I don't know.
It might
maybe.
Be.
We'll see.
I'm tossing and turning on my AFC prediction between the Bills and the Chargers. I can't sleep at night. All I can think about is who I'm going to pick to go to the Super Bowl. It's going to be one of the Bills or the Chargers. I'm going to feel bad about whichever one I don't pick.
You're going to have to pick the Chargers so you can make up with Alex.
You're the one who has to make up with Alex. I put Herbert 7. I'm the Herbert guy on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, and I know PFF grades have gone downhill over the years, but Josh Allen has a 90-plus PFF grade in 6 consecutive seasons, and he's the only quarterback to ever do that. And so Josh Allen's awesome. Would love to see him win a ring, especially for Buffalo, who has had a tumultuous affair with Super Bowl, with postseason runs. I would love to see Josh Allen get over that hump, as long as the Eagles aren't there, obviously. So there you have it, our QB rankings from 1 to 32. I'm sure all of the responses to these will be perfectly reasonable and measured.
Well, Joe Chick, a long-time Chalk Talk guy, I have to throw him out there, just commented. He might be catching it late. I'm sure he'll go back and listen. But he said, Mark, what is with the hate on Baker Mayfield? Joe, you're a Falcons fan. You're defending the Bucs quarterback here? But no, we talked about it. We both love Baker. He's one of my favorite players in the league to watch. It's just he keeps playing through injuries, and he's so bad towards the end of these seasons. This has been like 3 of the last 6 years now where he's played through an injury that has made him markedly worse. And I get that there's some toughness you have to give him respect and credit for, but man, there's just too many years that just go into the trash can because Baker's not healthy enough.
No. All right, we have gone very long on this podcast, far longer than I expected us to. So no final thoughts. No final thoughts. But thank you guys for joining us for episode number 238 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, except for the part about how we ranked your quarterback, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating wherever you stream your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube, or on Twitter, I'm at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. And we will catch you guys next time.